Hi, my name is Rudy, and today you'll be watching a documentary. The topic of the documentary is about the environment. And the question here today is, how does the federal government work to protect the environment?
Hi, my name is Luis, and the problem here is that pollution exists in our environment. That's no news to us. The group responsible for the big portion of the pollution includes businesses. Businesses like factories and plants have their own purpose and goals, but sadly, preserving the environment is not in their best interest. This is where the federal government comes in and takes action. The government not only imposes laws to regulate these businesses, but also makes sure that both sides are in a state of resolution.
So the historical background of this problem includes acts such as the Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act. So specifically, the Clean Air Act is one of the number of pieces of legislation relating to the reduction of airborne contaminants, smog, and air pollution. The use by governments to enforce Clean Air Act standards has contributed to improvements in human health and longer lifespans. Critics of this act may argue that it sapped corporate profits and contributed to outsourcing, while others may counter that by saying that it has improved environmental air quality, which has generated more jobs than it has eliminated. And the clean air...
Businesses don't care how much they destroy and contaminate our only planet. They don't care about meeting their requirements to keep our environment clean. They only care about meeting their requirements to gain profit.
So how can our environment be protected against these polluters?
This is where our government comes in. In order to obligate these businesses to keep our environment clean, the executive government enforces two types of different laws with two different options. One, a law that states that such business can only introduce a certain X amount of substance or chemical. Then, if the law is broken, the business faces its enumerated penalty. The second law is one that states that such business cannot introduce a chemical or substance at all. This law, if broken, tends to be followed by stricter penalties. These types of laws tend to regulate businesses that were known to pollute very hazardous chemicals like mercury. An example of this happening is at Lake Michigan, where oil refineries contributed to an increase in levels of mercury found at point source locations like, let's say, a sewage system that trickles its way down to a river. These oil refineries not only introduced one of the most toxic chemicals to humans, but it also flushed a large amount of ammonia into the Great Lakes. In a couple months, the whole lake was covered with algae. This happened because of an algae bloom, and the lake surface was multiplying all of the algae, and countless numbers of fish were dying because of the algae depleting the oxygen for the marine life. Also, there was the fish that were alive for fishermen to catch. They were found with large amounts of mercury, which means that the fishermen, if they were to eat this type of fish, then they would suffer from cancers or mutations and such. This is exactly why the second type of law is followed by a much stricter penalty. So then, if we go deeper, we find that most of these businesses are responsible for our domestic use. Each of us depends on oil, nuclear plants, and electrical power plants. The government cannot halt these businesses, or else our nation cripples. How far can our government go? How far can these businesses go? And how can we resolve this?
I don't know.
So basically, where all the action happens involving the enforcement of laws that protect the environment fall under the Department of Justice, also the EPA. The United States Environmental Protection Agency, or sometimes called the US EPA, is an agency of the federal government of the United States charged with protecting human health and the environment by writing and enforcing regulations based on laws passed by Congress.
So is the Department of Justice responsible for protecting our environment?
Yes and no, because the Department of Justice is composed of many divisions that are each responsible for enforcing laws to protect the United States in every way. It mandates each division specific responsibilities. And yes, one of these divisions are responsible for enforcing these environmental laws. Since the issue has to do with the environment, we'll have to take a closer look at the Environmental and Natural Resources Division.
So what does the Environmental and Natural Resources Division do?
I'm glad you asked, Rudy, why the Environmental and Natural Resources Division is responsible for enforcing laws and programs that protect the health and the environment of the United States. It takes legal action to enforce federal abatement laws, like the laws we discussed earlier. Not only does it serve the environment, but it also defends cases under wildlife protection laws.
So how's an environmental law reviewed for effectiveness?
The NEPA process consists of an evaluation of relevant environmental effects of a federal project or action undertaking. It includes a series of pertinent alternatives. The NEPA process begins with when an agency develops a proposal to address a need to take an action. Once a determination of whether or not the proposed action covered under the NEPA There are 3 levels of analysis when the federal government may undertake to comply with the law. The 3 levels include 1. Preparation of a categorical exclusion, CE. Preparation of an environmental assessment, EA, and finding of no significant impact, FONSI, FONSI, or preparation and drafting of an environmental impact statement, EIS. The Love Canal disaster. At the time of the dump's closure, Niagara Falls was entering an economic boom and the population had surpassed over 85,000. With the population expanding at regular percentages, the Niagara Falls City School District needed land to build new schools and attempted to purchase the property from Hooker Chemical that had been used to bury toxic waste. The corporation refused to sell, citing safety concerns, and took members of school board to the canal and drilled several boreholes to demonstrate that there were toxic chemicals below the surface. However, the board refused to compromise. Eventually, faced with property being condemned and/or expropriated, Hooker Chemical agreed to sell the condition to the board the entire property for $1. Eventually, the government relocated more than 800 families and reimbursed them for their homes, and the United States Congress passed a comprehensive environmental response Compensation and Liability Act, CERLA, or the Superfund Act, that holds polluters accountable for their damages. Occidental Petroleum was sued by the EPA and in 1995 agreed to pay $129 million in restitution. Residents' lawsuits were also settled in the years following the Love Canal disaster.
So the role interest groups have on implementing this policy is that they have websites, and on the website they talk about the environment and the different aspects of the environment and how, there's different ways to harm the environment, including dirty water, dirty air, pollution. They might talk about, they're not threatening people, but they're talking about how they might be fined. And so they give examples of littering. They might get examples of fines. And these groups, like as the Sierra Club, are pro-environmental. And they talk about they talk about other environmental issues besides littering. So basically, the website just reminds people to protect the environment before our world is permanently damaged. Most of these other interest groups might also talk about they're pro-business, meaning they do care for the environment, but they believe that they have a right to the property, and therefore it should not be completely disregarded. And so these groups might include the Alliance for America. So these groups, such as Alliance for America, are pro-business, like I believe I said before. They argue that the effects of environmental regulations you must consider employment, economic growth, and that this must be part of the policy-making equation. And then others might use the fact that people, such as farmers, demand inexpensive access to public land and the right to use their own property as they wish, or else they might want to be compensated from the government, and the government might, of course, there are some cases where the government is going to say no. So, the sources of research or opinion that are relevant to this policy area includes an article called The U.S. Economic Stimulus Package. Includes billions for energy and the environment, and the author is Larry West, and it talks about the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009. It was a $787.2 billion economic stimulus package proposed by Barack Obama, and it was passed by Congress. And these provisions in the stimulus package include $4.5 billion for repair of federal buildings to increase energy efficiency using green technology, $11 billion for smart grid activities, including to modernize the nation's electric grid, $2.5 billion for energy efficiency and renewable energy research, $500 million to prepare workers for careers in energy efficiency and renewable energy fields. There's also $6 billion to clean up former weapon production and energy research sites, $6 billion for local clean water and drinking water infrastructure improvements, $1.2 billion for EPA's nationwide environmental cleanup programs, including Superfund, and that's basically it. So this article can be related to our policy topic because it shows how the federal government, or the president in this case, is taking action to regulate the environment, mainly through promoting green technology.